Cardiac muscle tissue is one of 3 different types of muscle tissue you have in your body. So we have skeletal muscle tissue, which is like what moves your skeleton. And then we have smooth muscle, which would be like in your blood vessels, but also like in your stomach would be smooth muscle. And then we have cardiac muscle. So cardiac muscle is a very special type of tissue that has some interesting, unique properties to it. So when we talk about this, remember that we are talking about histology. So we're talking about microscopic anatomy. Okay, so this would be something that we would see these cardiac muscle cells underneath a microscope. So the interesting thing about the cardiac muscle cells is that they have slightly different characteristics than, say, for example, the skeletal muscle, but they are striated. And we'll talk about what those striations are next quarter when we get to the muscle tissue. They are striated and they are also branched. And they have maybe 1 to 2 nuclei. So they don't have a lot of nuclei like the skeletal muscle does. And they have many large mitochondria. And this is because they are producing a lot of ATP in order to keep the heart pumping, right? We need oxygen, mitochondria, glucose, and cellular respiration, and then the production of ATP. When we look at them, we can see that they're interconnected. So cells are connected by structures called intercalated discs. These intercalated discs have 2 different types of protein joints, essentially, between the cells. And so we have desmosomes that connect to the cells. And these are desmosomes are actually anchoring cells. These, I think we might have talked about, are important in the skin because they anchor the skin layers, right? So these are anchoring proteins. And then we have what is referred to as a gap junction. And this is a hole. It's actually a space. It's actually a channel. So this is a channel through which ions can travel from one cardiac muscle cell to another. And we'll talk about this is really important because it allows for the impulse that causes the muscles to contract to like move like a wave through the heart from the atria, then down to the bottom of the ventricles, and then up from the ventricles, from the bottom of the ventricles up. And so this allows for, we're going to talk about that electrical charge in the heart. So let's look at a diagram that shows these. This is what it would look under, actually under a light microscope. You can see that you have the striations. You can see that they're branched. You can see the nucleus is pushed up to the side because it's filled with contractile myofibrils. And then you can see the intercalated discs. The desmosomes keep the cardiac muscle cells from pulling apart. So when one cardiac muscle cell contracts, it actually pulls on another. And then these are the gap junctions, which create channels from one cardiac muscle cell to another. We'll talk more about the structure of muscle next quarter, but one of the things that we need for muscle contraction to occur is calcium ions. So calcium ions are really important in that process of muscle contraction. And so that's what is shown. The sarcoplasmic reticulum is a really important place where calcium ions are stored. And then when the muscle is stimulated to contract, calcium ions would be released there. So this is you can see it's a branched kind of cell. It is kind of a little bit fatter than a skeletal muscle, and it has fewer nuclei, but lots and lots of mitochondria. So let's talk about that heart physiology. So let's talk about what happens when you get a contraction of a heart cell. So we talk about an impulse. And what this is a change in the membrane potential of a cell. The membrane potential is due to a difference in charge between the inside of a cell and the outside of a cell. So it is like potential energy, right? So it's the difference between the inside and the outside of the cell. So if I look at like the inside of my cardiac muscle cell, right, it would generally have a negative charge on the inside and a positive charge on the outside. So this is the inside of my cell. This would be my outside of my cell. Now, if there is a change in this, where the inside becomes more positive than the outside, or it moves towards positivity, then that is what is referred to as depolarization. So let's just show this negative, negative, and then all of a sudden we have a positive, positive, negative, negative. And then on the other side, oops, I should have done those in blue. Negative, negative, right? And on the other side, okay, so this is what the impulse is. It's just a change in the membrane potential. So the inside becomes temporarily positively charged. And so this is actually what is referred to as depolarization. So it moves towards zero, right? It depolarizes, but then it overshoots zero. And so this would be my depolarization. So this depolarization can actually cause the muscle to contract. This, where it becomes positive again, that would be repolarization. So that is where the resting membrane potential is reestablished. So depolarization is where it becomes more positive, and then repolarization has to occur. You want your heart to contract and then relax. And during that relaxing part is when we have repolarization. And so this is kind of a brief introduction into heart, the physiological mechanisms of cardiac muscle contraction.